Okay, we've got a couple of word problems here, so let's take a look at these. Question number 13. A pilot flying over the Norfolk airport is told he will have to redirect and land in either Richmond or Raleigh due to air traffic. He is then told he must land in Raleigh. Find the distance he will travel. In other words, how far does he have to go if he's at Norfolk and now he's going to have to land in Raleigh? So this is what we're looking for. Because this is not a right triangle, we can't use the sine, cosine, tangent functions directly. And instead, we're going to use the law of sines. And the reason we can use the law of sines is because we have two of the angle measures, which means we can find the third angle measure. We have one side length, and the side length that we're given is not and we're given one side length. So this will allow us to use the law of sines, and we're going to find an angle or a side length. So we're going to put that in the numerator. So the first thing we need to do, though, is find what is this angle measure between turning towards Richmond and then coming back and turning towards Raleigh. So to find that, remember that's simply that 180 minus the sum of the two angles we've already been given. And the reason for that is because the sum of any three angles in a triangle, the sum of all three angles in a triangle, is equal to 180 degrees. So I have 180 minus the sum of 83 and 21. Okay, so this angle then is 76 degrees. So now I've got enough information. I've got the 76-degree angle and the length of the side opposite it. I'm finding the length of a side and I have the angle opposite it. So I'm going to put the sides in the numerator. So x divided by the sine of 83 degrees is equal to, and then it's 139 divided by the sine of 83 degrees. Nope, sorry, of 76 degrees. Let's keep track of what we're working on, right? Now, why do I put the side lengths in the numerator here? Well, I put the side lengths in the numerator because this allows me to do one less step in trying to solve the equation. I could cross multiply, but that also gives me extra steps. So instead, I'm simply going to multiply both sides of the equation by the sine of 83. Because when I do that, on the left-hand side, I would have the sine of 83 degrees divided by the sine of 83 degrees, which is equal to 1. And 1 times x is x. But if I multiply one side of the equation, I have to do the exact same thing on the other side of the equation because those are the algebraic rules. So I get x is equal to 139 times the sine of 83 degrees divided by the sine of 76 degrees. So I'm going to go to my calculator and type that in. So I have 139 times the sine of 83, don't forget to close those parentheses, divided by the sine of 76. And so what this tells us is that x is approximately 142.2, which means that the pilot has to travel 142.2 miles. So he's going to travel about, and this is what we would say, he's going to travel about 142.2 miles. Okay, let's take a real quick look at question number 14. Part of a marching band formed a triangle with the trumpet players on one side, clarinet players on another side, and saxophone players on a third side. So let's take a look at this triangle, and I'm just going to draw a triangle, okay? And I have trumpet players here. You know, it doesn't really matter where, but I'm going to put trumpet players over here, right? And we have saxophone players. And we have, what was the third side? Oh, clarinet, sorry. And we have clarinet players. Okay, now the angle formed by the trumpet and saxophone players. So here are my trumpet and here's my saxophone. So this angle formed here is 65 degrees. If the clarinet line is 20 feet long, so here's my 20 feet right here. The clarinet line is 20 feet long. And the saxophone line is 8 feet long. Well, here are my sax, so here's 8 feet. Find the angle formed by the trumpet and clarinet players. So here's the angle, the trumpet and clarinet players. So here's a situation where I'm given 2 side lengths and 1 angle. So I can use the law of sines with this, but I also know that there is a possibility that there would be no triangle formed, or that there would be 2 triangles formed, or the 1 triangle. So I have to remember to check for that in this situation. All right, so what is my equation going to look like? Well, I have the 65 degrees and I have the side opposite. And because I'm looking for an angle measured, those are going in the angle is going in the numerator. So I have the sine of 65 degrees over my 20 feet. Okay, and this is going to be equal to the sine of x over my 8 feet. Now remember, I'm doing it this way because this time I want the sine in the numerator because I'm looking for x and I want the least amount of work that I have to write out. Now I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 8, and because I'm looking for an angle measure, I need an inverse sine. So I get the inverse sine of 8 times the sine of 65 degrees divided by 20. This is going to equal the measure of my angle. So this is going to equal my x. So let's just check, can I even do this? So I type into my calculator 8 times the sine of 65 degrees, remember to close the parentheses, divided by 20. And remember, this has to be a number between -1 and +1. And when I simplify it, it is a number between -1 and +1. So this is possible. So that means in order to find the measure of the angle, I'm going to use second and sine together because I want the inverse sine. And then to copy that, I'm going to use the second and the negative button. So it copied this answer in here, close my parentheses and enter. And so what I find is that the angle that we're looking for, the angle formed between the trumpet line and the clarinet line, that angle is approximately 21.3 degrees. Now, let's double check. If I add 21.3 plus the 65 that I already had, is this less than 180? If it's not, then this isn't possible, but we know it is because 60 plus 20 is 80. So we definitely know we're less than 180 degrees. So this is one possible triangle that we've created. What is the other possibility? Well, I'm going to call that x prime. And I'm going to go ahead and switch colors here. And so what is x prime? Well, x prime is that other possible triangle that I might be able to create. And to find that value, I do 180 minus the 21.3 that we had. And so 180 minus 21.3, this is equal to 158.7. Okay, now here's why this works and why we use that 180, because if the sine of an angle is positive, then that means that that angle is either going to be terminating in standard position in angle or in quadrant 1, or it's going to terminate in standard position in quadrant 2. And so those two angles then could potentially, they would be on the same line. So that's where the 180 comes from, okay? So now I'm going to take this 150 degree angle, and what I have to find out is this. Can I add 158.7 to 65 and get a number less than 180? Right? Like, is this possible? So if I take my 158.7 and I add 65, and the reason I'm adding 65 is because that's the angle I already know is in the triangle. When I do that, I get 223 degrees. So no, this is not less than 180, which means this is not a solution. So there's only one solution to this equation, and that is that the angle formed between the clarinet and the trumpet lines is 21.3 degrees. And now you could find the angle formed between the clarinets and the saxophones because the sum of the three angles has to be 180 degrees.